Welcome to Acing It, the podcast where we talk about asexuality, aromanticism, and all queer topics. We are here to share stories, unpack media, and dive into topics that touch our lives, talk to others about their own experience, and have an all-around lovely time. So settle in. I'm Mar, and I'm what I like to call a pansexual asexual, and I'm joined with B.
Hello. I am also on the asexual spectrum, also a romantic.
And we're going to be talking about our experience to start with so that you can get to know us and sort of know where we're coming from.
And so this is more recent to you. Would you like to start with your experience in finding?
Wonderful. Thank you so much for putting me on the spot. I identify myself on the asexual spectrum, but I don't really think I fit into a specific box. If I had to, maybe it would be agosexual, which is where...
Oh.
Did I not tell you this?
I think you might have, but define the term for me again. I don't remember.
You feel fine talking about sex, referring to sex, looking at sex in media of any kind. Like it doesn't affect you. I can read about it. It doesn't disgust me, but I do feel very indifferent to it in real life. I will not necessarily want to engage with it in real life. It feels very much like science fiction, right, which is what I've always kind of explained it as. Sex for me is science fiction. It is not a real thing. It is just, it's a thing that exists that I have used and been a part of, but it feels very removed from who I am as a person.
Sure, that makes sense.
The realization of asexuality started with you, actually. So B and I went to uni together, and I always thought you were very, very chill as a person. And we had a few discussions where our roommates were going out and having parties or going to clubs. And the only ones that we really enjoyed going to were these 90s and 2000s dancing parties, because a lot of people were a lot less focused on pulling, and all we wanted to do was sing very loudly and dance.
And just have fun.
Just have fun.
I guess pulling is fun for some people.
Fair. Good point. And I had asked you, like, why, like, are you, I think I must have asked you at some point why you weren't dating, or you, I don't know. I feel like it's something that you always ask at some point to someone. And I don't remember what you told me, but we did have a discussion about how it just wasn't a thing that you were into. And I was like, oh, okay. Fair. And then I moved on with my life because I couldn't really identify with this at this time, or I don't know, maybe I was bamboozling myself. It's a real possibility as well. But I only really started to relate to asexuality later in my 20s. I was 26 and I was in a relationship with a man with whom everything was working out well, aside from the intimacy, which I thought, yes.
I was going to say, I would, because intimacy can be non-physical as well.
Good point.
So was it...
Sexual.
So yes, sexual intimacy.
Yes. And we had a lot of discussion about it, because he had been my first actual partner. So I didn't really know what was expected aside from everything that I had learned and or seen in media. So I was going off of no information aside from what others had told me, and what my gynecologist told me as well, which in retrospect is terrible. But my gynecologist was like, just keep vibing. At some point, something will happen. And I was like, okay, well, because if you don't know, you don't know. Like, it's not...
Right.
It's not necessarily obvious that something's wrong or that you're not like everybody else. If no one kind of tells you, you just assume that you're doing something wrong. You feel like it's a problem that comes from inside, from you. And so because everything else was going well with that partner at the time, I thought, okay, I'm going to fix this. And I ended up doing a whole bunch of crazy shenanigans to try to solve the problem, which at that point I had decided was a problem, which is, why do I feel nothing when I have sex? And it wasn't disgust, it wasn't painful, it wasn't horrible, it was just meh. I just didn't care, and I just didn't want to, and it felt like a chore. And it felt like a chore every single time. There was never a moment where I was like, oh yeah, I totally am in the mood. I was never in the mood. I wanted to live my life and be with him, yes, and have intimacy moment, yes, but none of the sex, which obviously was not, well, not obviously, but it was not really working out for him. And I was like, okay, we're going to fix this because I like you. So I ended up doing acupuncture.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Didn't know that.
Yeah. I went to see an acupuncturist for like 3 sessions, and he opened up my chakras or whatever. So I got needles inserted into my body to release the knot
Can't
of
be
whatever.
all the acupuncturists. Sorry.
What?
That's a quote from Mulan. We can't all be acupuncturists.
From Mulan?
I'm sorry. Yes.
I need to watch this movie again.
Yes.
Who says this? Mushu?
No, it's when they're in the where all the spirits come out and they're like, my children never caused any problems. They all became acupuncturists. Well, we can't all be acupuncturists. No, your great-granddaughter had to be a cross-dresser. That is B's Disney recap.
Anyway.
Sorry.
So I did acupuncture. Didn't do anything for me. It did relax me, though. So I don't know if it was just placebo or what, but it didn't work on what it was supposed to work, but I kind of vibed with it.
Because it can't be fixed.
Good point. I'm talking as my experience at the time. At the time, I had a problem that needed to be solved. I didn't see it as something normal until later down the line. So at the moment, I have a problem. I need to fix it. Acupuncture doesn't work. I see a hypnotherapist 4 times. I spend did you know how expensive it is to see an a hypnotherapist who's gonna like...
I believe it.
Yes. And it relaxed me. I felt great. I slept a lot afterwards. Yeah. Didn't solve my problem though.
And not one of them said, hey, this is maybe like nothing to be fixed.
Literally 0. I saw 3 sex therapists, and the first 2, well, the first one was abysmal. I don't even remember what they had suggested, but I saw them, I don't know, like 3 times, and immediately I was like, you know what, I don't vibe with you, I don't feel comfortable with you, I'm not going to see you again. I saw another one, and she gave me horrible advice, which was try all kinds of crazy shit. Like, maybe you're into something that you don't know, and maybe you need to like...
Oh, like you haven't discovered your kink yet.
Yes, that's exactly what she was suggesting, that maybe I was into some kinky shit that I didn't know. So I'm innocent. I'm 26. I don't know shit. So what do? I go on and I go to my partner and I'm like, maybe we need to try stuff. So we do. And the interesting fact is, to this day, I am one of the people that have had the most out there sex experiences of all of my friends who are allo, which is insane to think about. But I went to a dungeon, I went to a sex club, we did some, just like a bunch of just random stuff that online, we looked it up online, we're like, what would people do to spice up their life? And we're just like, try that stuff. And not all of it was unpleasant, but it just, again, it was a fun experience. Very much in a, why not? Let's go to the club and dance. It didn't affect me negatively, but it also didn't work in fixing my problem. It was just a thing that I did that I was like, okay, well, that's another thing that I can cross off of my list. This is a unsolved problem or a thing that is not being solved. And I ended up seeing a 3rd sex therapist, and that was 2.5 years into my relationship with my partner. Who eventually, I think on session 6 or 7, was like, do you think, and I could tell that she was being very careful with the words that she was using. She did not want to frighten me, I think. But she was like, do you think that perhaps it's not a problem and that you're just not interested? And I cried immediately. I burst into tears because I think I had been hoping for someone to tell me this, that it maybe wasn't a problem. And everyone acted like it was a problem. And so I was like, it's a problem. All the adults are telling me it's a problem that I need to fix. So it's got to be a problem. They know better than me. They're older. And she was the first one who was like, it's maybe you're just not into it. Like, maybe stop trying to fix a thing that's unfixable because it's not a problem. It's just the way that you are. How about that? And I was like, well, that's inconvenient because I have a partner who's into it. So what do we do? And she was like, all right, bring him in next session. So I brought him at the next session. We sat down. We had a discussion. She asked him a bunch of questions, which I will not divulge for, privacy reasons. She asked me a bunch of questions. We started driving back home, broke up that same night. And it was horrible, but necessary.
Yeah.
And I think it just kind of, it awakened the both of us to the fact that this wasn't going to be, that this wasn't going to work. Because I can love you all that you want, and you can love me all that you want. If what you need from me is sex, I'm not going to be able to give it to you unless I compromise something very important in me. And so we just kind of parted ways. It was awful. Now we're on good terms. Life is great. But I think I needed that to be able to move forward and start accepting it. And from that moment on, I started looking at asexuality as a possibility. Not even just, oh yeah, I am ace. Just as maybe, just like explore this a little bit. So I did. I started exploring this. I looked it up online. I bought a bunch of books about it and I read about it. And some elements seemed to fit. Some didn't. So I still was a little bit confused as to where it could fit in, because I was like, yeah, this a little bit, but also not this, but this a little bit, but maybe not this. And it was a conversation with you that I had where you were like, why are you trying to fit into a box? If it fits right, just accept it and just say, I'm ace. You don't need to like specifically pinpoint where. You can, if it fits, as long as it fits, just keep it for yourself and try it on kind of like you do a coat. And if one day it doesn't fit, you just remove the coat and you can move on to another label because it's fluid. That's thanks to you.
Oh, I am so wise.
You are. And then essentially what happened is, when was it? Like, 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, I started speaking about asexuality on TikTok because I didn't have a job. I was kind of bored. I didn't really know what to do, and it felt like a thing that I could do that would occupy me. And so many people came out of nowhere and started commenting and saying, oh, I identify with this and I have questions on this. And I started talking about it more and more about my own experience. And I kind of realized that no one knows what's going on and what asexuality is and what it's not and how it fits and how we accept it and blah, blah, blah. And so here I am a year later doing this podcast. What about you?
Well, you definitely did a lot more exploring than I did. I came to this realization that I didn't have, quote unquote, the normal reaction to sex and romance when I was younger, and I was just kind of like, okay, and moved on. So when I was younger, you watch all those teen romance movies and you giggle about boys with your friends, and they always ask, oh, well, who's your celebrity crush? Who are you attracted to? And I'm always like, no one, because I don't know them. It was a very big thing for me. I'm like, I don't know the person. How can I be attracted to someone without knowing them? They were like, B, just look at someone, and if you like the look of them, then you're attracted to. And it never clicked for me in that way, because I'm just like, sure, I can appreciate they look nice, but people can look nice and not look nice, but that doesn't mean you're attracted to them. Like, and then when the like sexual plot lines came on TV and on movies where like they're just like, damn the consequences, I have to have you, I'm like, no you don't, just walk away. Like, you're dooming an entire population. I don't understand. So I didn't quite understand. And when you're younger, you have a very like black and white picture of the world sometimes, so it just wasn't clicking. So you get up or you grow up and people start dating and you look around and be like, well, there's no one that I'm really wanting to date. And I feel so the very first time I was so, I'm sure the boys in my high school were just so confused because they would take me out, like this one kid took me out on a date and then we went to the movies and it was nice. Don't hold my hand. We'll eat popcorn and like platonic go to the movies. And then afterwards he's like, well, I would like to date you. I'm like, we are on a date. He's like, no, I mean, I'd like to date you. I'm like, we're on a date now. If you want to date me, you can ask me on another date. But like, I'm just like, I was so difficult. I'm so sorry to you wherever you are. So yeah, so dated one guy in high school. We broke up and was like, this isn't a thing you want. I'm like, no, not really. Let's just be friends. He's like, cool. And yeah, we like kissed once. It was like kissing a cold fish. Felt nothing. And I'm like, this can't be a thing that people like to do. This is a lie. People are lying. So yeah, so didn't date then at all in college. Didn't feel the need, didn't feel any want or urge or anything like that. I was very happy. When I moved away, I did date a little bit in DC, but that was more just to be like, try to get into the social scene, try to maybe find, I was more just looking for a friend. I've always said like my perfect relationship is like a long-term letter writing thing. Like that would be very perfect for me. I go on dates with these various partners, boys and girls, and it would just be like, I'd kiss you, it'd be like kissing a sibling, or again, a fish. All I could think of is fish. And I've had people tell me like, oh, you're a very good kisser. I'm like, that's because I'm analyzing every aspect of it and not being in the moment. Like I'm not like feeling anything. So it's very like mechanic. And so yeah, about a year into dating various people, I was just like, I'm not feeling it. I'm not, just went back to like, I was happier single and not having to pretend. It just felt like pretending and leading them on a little bit, and that I didn't think was fair. Because I didn't put in my profile that I was ace, because I hadn't found the word yet. I just thought there was just something different. And, I'm like, with my parents' divorce, I'm like, oh, maybe that's why I'm numb to romance and stuff.
How old were you?
25-ish. But I didn't have the term until I think I was on Tumblr or something, and the word popped up, and I'm like, oh, what's this? And then Googled it, and I'm like, oh god, there's a word for this. That's amazing. And then I didn't really look too much into it. I was just kind of like, sweet, there's a word, it's normal, other people have this, moving on, getting on with my life, not gonna try anymore, because I don't need to, and why would I when it's not a pleasurable experience.
Have you
Go ahead.
Did you tell your parents about it when you figured it out?
Yeah, it was about half a year later. I told my mom. I actually came out to my mom twice because I forgot I did it the first time. So I told her like pretty much quite quickly after finding the word, and she didn't quite get it, but she was like, okay, fine, whatever. And then I told her that a year after that, after I maybe talked to you a bit, and we'd done more talking about it and more exploring, and then she had questions after I told her. She's like, yeah, you've told me this already. I'm like, oh, okay. She's like, but I don't understand, like, because you've never had any experiences, so how do you know? And I was like, well, would you ask a gay person because he's never slept with a man? How does he know if they're gay? And she's like, oh, yeah, that's a good point. I'm like, it's just something At least for me it was. So I came out to my mom, and she's like, I can't remember exactly what she said, but she's like, well, she just had a hard time understanding the not feeling anything. She's like, how do you know you don't feel anything? I'm like, because I don't feel any. I'm like, I didn't have the words at that time to like fully describe. Like, I didn't have the hunger metaphor at that time. So I'm just like, I'm like, how do you know that you're attracted to men? How does anyone know they're attracted to anyone? You just kind of know.
You don't spend as much time asking yourself questions.
Right. I don't know what it's like to be attracted to a person, so it's hard to define a negative in that way. And I'm like, well, when you got married to these men, what goes into that decision? And she's like, well, because I love them. I'm like, okay, define love for me. Like, what is that for you in terms of non-fan? Like, I love you as my mother, but like...
Reverse psychology, your mom.
And so then my mother was like, well... She's like, well, I don't either. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe you are ace as well. You know? Maybe this is something that people... Because I'm like, it's not talked about. It's invisible. Obviously, like, with your experience, people don't think about it. They think, oh, you're not attracted to someone, it must be a problem. You must be broken in some way.
And I think there's a level of acceptance. Like, I obviously don't know about your mom, I only know about me, but I think the main difference between your experience and my experience is that I fought against it every step of the way. I saw the word, and instead of being relieved that it existed, I was like, God damn it, I hope not. Mm-hmm. I hope not, because that's gonna be rough for me.
Yeah.
If that's the case. Whereas I feel like you saw it and you're like, thank God it exists.
Because I was, sort of leading towards that maybe I am broken inside. I don't know. Shouldn't I be feeling things that other people feel? And it was like, nope, I'm good. Normal, not broken. This is, other people have experienced it. And I think a lot more people experience it than we know.
Yeah, because it's not talked about. And because when we go see professionals,
yes,
like I did, the majority of them either don't know what it is or, just don't know what it is. I think the majority of the ones that I've seen, it's not that they tried to make me do anything. It's just that they didn't know it was possible to not, because it's so ingrained in the culture.
Right.
Have kids, have a partner, move in together. Society is made for 2 or 4. Anytime that you're over 4 or under 2, like, what are you doing? You're there's something wrong that you're doing.
When you say 4, you mean 2 people, 2 kids, or 2 adults, 2 kids.
Yes.
Okay. I'm like,
yes.
We're getting into polyamory now. All right.
So you were cool with the term asexual. When did the aromantic happen, or how did you come across that term for the first time?
Well, you had sent me that book that you had read.
Oh my God, I did! I had sent you The Invisible Orientation, An Introduction to Asexuality by Julie Sondra Decker.
Yes, because I'd accepted all the emotions and all the feelings I had felt about this and accepted who I was, but I didn't have the language to talk about it. I didn't have the vocabulary, the terms, what is asexuality versus aromantic, what is demisexuality, what is libido, what is attract, like all these different terms that come in with the human experience that they just don't talk about. Like, you have sex education, they're like, don't get pregnant, don't have sex.
Or you will die.
Or you will die. You will get pregnant and you will die. It is between a man and a woman, and don't do it. And that's it. Like, especially in America, like, that is your sex education. And so people are left to figure this shit out for themselves.
To give a bit of reference, in France, we had a tiny baby bit, I remember, in troisième, which is, God only knows when that is. Anyway, it was early. I must have been 14, maybe? Mm-hmm. Probably 14. And we were separated, girls versus guys, which already doesn't make sense, because what if I'm attracted to girls? What then?
Yeah, you're not being as clever as you think you are.
But what I mean is, automatically, they all assumed woman boy, or know, woman man. Like, at no point they thought maybe this 13-year-old girl is gonna be attracted to women one day. So it was just girls in the library, the school library, because they needed to have a lot of space for all of the girls to come, and they showed the banana. So apparently it's an actual thing that happens, but we had a banana.
Did they put the condom on?
Yeah, and they put a condom on a banana in front of us, and they were like, so that's how you good luck. And then they had like a bowl of condoms, and I'm like, I'm 14. First of all, I don't care. But and the funny thing I remember is I had a conversation about it later on with most of my friends were like, yeah, we don't care. And some had already had sex before, and I was like, what do you mean? Like, what do you when did you find the time to do this? I'm studying. I'm going to, like, I have these activities. I'm busy. What do you mean you're having sex? What are you doing? How are you getting time? I didn't understand. I didn't understand.
It's like you had sex with Jeffrey down the hall, like in homeroom. Ew.
For me, I hadn't even held hands with anyone, and it just seemed insane that some people had sex in my grade when I had never held hands or really been attracted to people before. Like, I had thought some people were cool looking. Well, men, because at that point I didn't know that I didn't care about gender. But that I had seen some dudes and I was like, yeah, cool. At no point had I thought I would want to sleep with that person. I was very much in my hand holding era.
Have you ever really left your hand holding era?
I've never left it. If anything, it has grown. The more I've gone, the more I've dipped my toes into like sex, and the more I'm like, nah, I'm cool. I'm gonna go back to my 14-year-old self where I cuddle with you and I hold your hand.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's been the extent. And then my mom never told me anything. I do remember when I must have been 15 probably, and I had never dated anyone. I was gonna say obviously, which is not obvious because a lot of people at 15 started dating.
Yeah.
I had not, because I didn't really care at that point. And also I hadn't really found anyone. So I don't know. It's not that I wasn't interested. It's just that I hadn't found anyone that I was putting any interest in. And my mom had come up to me and was like, if you're gay, you can tell me.
Thanks, Mom.
Actually, it made me feel good. I was like, thanks. I'm not though. Which, I bamboozled her there. But at the time I was like, no, I'm like, thanks. I'm not, but thanks.
That's so funny because I had the same thing happen as well.
Really?
Yeah, because I can't remember. My mom and I were talking, well, who do you like in like the movies and stuff? Well, I'm like, oh, I think I like Elizabeth Bennet because I identify with Mr. Darcy because that's more of my personality. So I would need like an Elizabeth Bennet kind of person. She's like, oh, so are you gay? And I'm like, no. She's like, but you like the woman character. I'm like, what does that have to do with anything? I like her personality. That doesn't have to do with anything about her being a woman. She's like, so you're not gay? I'm like, I don't think so.
I think the moment you say, I don't think so, there's alarm bells should be ringing everywhere. I mean, I don't know. Who knows? Yeah. Who really knows? But the thing is, people actually do know. And the fact that we didn't, it was probably a sign that probably we didn't give a shit.
Right.
Anyway, right. So continue forth.
Oh, I was just saying, like in sex education, we had no reference. There's like no reference to anything. It's just like, and this is a problem across the board. This isn't a problem just for asexuality, but it's like all you get is heteronormative, don't have sex. Here's a banana. Doesn't even look like a banana. What are we talking about?
Do you know?
What? Do I know?
What it looks
like? Yes. I too consume media. It's on TV sometimes, on like TV shows. Right. Just, the quick glimpse of it. I'm pretty sure it's not a yellow banana.
No.
Okay, definitely. I'm 80% sure it's not a yellow banana. So yeah, it was... So you had sent me that book, found the language, found the terminology, and then talking to you more and how you were saying, like, you would want a partner, you would want someone maybe possibly down the line that you could be, compatible with if sex was not on the table. And I was just kind of like, yes, I would want maybe someone to live with, but platonically. Like, I'm not romantic attraction has never been something that I felt either, so I'm thinking I'm probably more on the asexual aromantic spectrum. Not sex repulsed, not disgusted by sex, which some people can be, but just more like, I'm good. I'm not hungry, not needing it, not wanting it, happy as a clam.
Good for you. All right, so you identified, once you found those terms, you're like, okay, I'm good with this. You haven't really reconsidered it since because it still applies to you?
Yeah, pretty much. And I just, we were talking about the coats thing, and like, sexuality is a slider, it's a spectrum. Like, you can feel whatever you want to feel from day to day, and it doesn't have to be a problem, at least in my mind. You can find the label, it feels good, you feel happy with it. Maybe tomorrow I'll bump into a person and be like, oh shit, I feel sexual attraction. And then that doesn't negate all I felt previous. Will be just a new experience.
How do you feel then about, because I've told you before, I am quite a bit on social media, and I've seen a lot of discourse about how you can't be asexual if, or you can't be aromantic if, or so many questions. Am I asexual if? And just a whole bunch of list of a whole bunch of questions of
Yeah.
people who don't know if they're allowed to identify to this spectrum.
Well, okay, so, I mean, asexual, again, hard to define a negative. It's a new term, it's not discussed. Yeah, there's going to be growing pains and finding out what exactly it means for everyone. But let's go back to something more, people are more comfortable with. Well, certain people. If you're gay, if you are someone who's attracted to a man who's attracted to a man, and you've slept with a woman, does that make you less gay? You know, no, it doesn't. It just means you were exploring and trying to figure it out. Or maybe you're trying to deny that part of yourself, you know? People come to the realization that they're gay or lesbian or bisexual or polyamorous or whatever term you want later in life. You don't have to figure it out right then. There's no gold standard to be like, oh, I've never had sex. The person who's never had sex is the only person that can be asexual. That is weird. Why are we policing people's sexuality in that way?
Do you think it's because people are desperately in need of labels to be able to... okay, I had this discussion with a friend recently about I can't spell this word.
Hierarchy. Yes,
Sorry,
hierarchy.
say that again.
Hierarchy. Yes.
Hierarchy.
Yes, close.
No.
Enough. Yes, it's
I
perfect.
hate it.
It's good. It's perfect.
Okay, cool. So, about that word, la hiérarchie, this way. And about how people need to put other people in boxes.
Oh, yes,
whether
for
it's
sure.
sexuality
For sure.
or something else, to be able to decide, am I at the same level as you? Am I above you or am I under you? Where do I fit in regarding who I'm talking to right now?
Yes.
And when we had this discussion, it was a completely different discussion. We were talking about autism and about how we have not a care about hierarchy at all. But do you think this is why people are policing this so much? Is because they need that box to be able to situate themselves next to other people?
100%. I think humanity as a whole is a lot more comfortable with clearly defined borders. Us versus them, me versus you. How do I place myself in this context? It just makes things easier, cleaner, better to navigate. If you can slap someone in a box and be like, that's where they live, you know, I can now move on with my life. It's much harder to just accept that everything's fluid and maybe a little scary to accept that things are ever-changing, unable to be defined. I think it probably is natural that people want to define the term so they can find their box, find other people's boxes.
Because I think it's less about where do you fit in and more where do I fit in next to you.
Yes.
So it's, I think, just like everything, just like most feelings, jealousy or envy or love is like, it's about me. Where am I compared to you?
Right. It's like, oh, because then that makes them ask questions about themselves. It's easier to teach a binary than it is to teach everyone is on a spectrum and all of humanity can exist on all the things. You name a thing, someone's attracted to it. You name a thing, someone hates it. Like, it's just... nuance is hard to teach.
All right. Should we move on to defining terms?
Sure, we've talked about a lot of terms, so maybe we should define some of them.
All right. Do you want to have a go at what is aromanticism for you?
Sure.
/ asexuality, because you know you're in both. And what's the difference for you between asexuality and aromanticism?
Right. Okay. So aromanticism, if you want like the standard internet definition, is a lack of romantic attraction to others, low or absent desire for a romantic activity. The question is, what is romance? You know?
Okay, obviously we can only ever speak about our own personal experience from our point of view, so we will never be able to catch all the subtleties and the varieties of everyone. Right. But for you,
for me,
what is romance?
For me, romance is, all I can think is like looking lovingly into someone's eyes, wanting to be around someone all the time. You know, I have a hard time because I have a hard time splitting like friendship and romance. Like, I guess romance to me is just like more cuddlier. Like, you are my person and I love you above all else, and I want to hold your hand and I want to bring you flowers and I want to read you poetry and play you a song on the guitar, and please don't play me a song on the guitar.
What? I'm not trying to change the trajectory
No, I'm
of
just
your
saying
life.
in general, like to people, I'm like, please don't play me a song or read me a poem because I will just sit there and be in agony. I'll be like, no, thank you. But anyway, so for me, it's, I guess romance is what I define as romance is what you see in the movies, because how else am I gonna define something but what society shows me it is?
Should I tell you what I think romance is?
Yes, please do.
For me specifically, it's friendship with a je ne sais quoi. Because
Oh.
it is so, like you said, it's so very, very close to friendship.
Right. Because as I'm describing it, sorry to interrupt you, but as I'm describing it, I'm like, I would do all those things with a friend, though.
It's kind of what you were saying about not being able to explain the absence of something. Like, you can't put a word on romance because you don't know what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, for you specifically. But I think for me, it's, yeah, very close to friendship. The main difference is the attraction I will have for this person physically, not wanting to act on it necessarily. Although I don't mind holding hands, I don't mind kissing. I don't mind having sex every once in a while just for like emotional connection, but I feel like it's always been more of a tool than something I need. Like, it's a dynamic thing, a dynamic tool that I use for a purpose, which sounds very clinical, but I have never used sex as like, oh yeah, just because I want to. It's always because, I don't know, I want to be closer to you, I want to experiment with something.
I want to make you feel good.
Yeah, it is also about reciprocity, but I've also never been in a relationship with with anyone who was on the A spectrum. So I don't really know what that would look like for me now. But with an allo, I would engage in sex just for them, basically, because I'm like, well, I don't hate it. I don't love it, but I don't hate it, so I don't mind doing it every so often for you. Kind of like, when you go to IKEA with a person that you love, even though you don't want to go, but you're like, oh, I guess I love you, so I'll go to IKEA with you.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Sex is like going to IKEA.
I think for me and you, our equivalent would be I would follow you to a plant shop and I would listen to you speak about all the plants and how to take care of them, even though I know deep in my heart that any plant that I get will die and that also I don't care. But I will do this for you. So, but for me, there's a level of attraction that is hard to place, because attraction for me happens out of nowhere and is very complex to track. A person, okay, how do I say that? I don't have a type that I can be attracted to. I have one in my mind, which never applies to reality, because in reality, I'm attracted to your personality, and the moment that I get to know you and I like your personality in a way that's different from friendship, I will find you attractive. So you could look like you could be any gender, you could look like anything. I do not care. If somehow the attraction happens based off your personality, you will become attractive to me, which, if you look at the people I have been in love with before, is a prime example of that. Like, not one of them I've dated or been in love with just the most random things. Like, the things is a terrible word, but I've fallen for people that look nothing like, that have, not one of them have had anything similar aside from a personality type that is a lot more chill than mine. That's about the only thing that kind of impacts it. But it is really hard to point out, because if you put a lineup of really handsome people, yeah, sure, they're good looking, but I don't care. I don't care about you. I don't. It's what you said earlier. I don't know you. How do I know if I'm attracted? I don't know who you are.
Yeah. Which I think, since we're defining terms, it's called demisexuality, demi-romanticism, which is, or gray asexuality, which is like you are only attracted to someone when you're comfortable around them or when you've known them for a while or know who they are or their personality. Then you become sexually attracted, romantically attracted.
Yes, I know some people that are in that like demi area and who will enjoy having sex with their partner and their partner only, and they will only, that's the only engagement they have. Like anybody else is kind of like meh. Like they just don't care. They have no interest in anybody else other than their partner.
Right.
Which I think is kind of nice.
Yeah, it's lovely.
Like, if it works, then wonderful. Yeah. And I think, okay, sorry. So moving back from demi, I think agosexuality is kind of one step back from that, which is attraction does exist, but instead of enjoying the actual sexual intimacy, it just still doesn't happen. I could envision it, like it has happened, that I would think about it, enjoy the idea of it, but the practice of it just never lived up to my expectations, because it's literally not something that I'm interested in. I'm just interested in imagining it sometimes. Yeah. I just feel like that would be fun, but only in my mind. Yeah. Never in practice.
And then it's because you don't have the physical sensations, so it being in your mind is nicer because you don't have to deal with not feeling anything physically.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can get more enjoyment out of something when you're not worried about, my body isn't feeling the way I think it should be feeling.
Yeah. I've never thought about this, but yes, it's happening in my brain, and my brain is less stressed about what it should and shouldn't be feeling, because I'm not sharing this with anyone. It's my little fantasy in my own little mind that I get to have for myself, that I will not act on with anyone or with myself, by the way. Like it's daydreaming. Mm-hmm. It's a daydream that I have that happens rarely, but when it does, I'm like, all right, just pop off, do what you want to do. And it just kind of exists for a while and then disappears, but it will never make me want to act on it in any way, shape, or form, which actually leads us to libido versus attraction.
Right. So libido being your sex drive, your horniness level, for lack of a better term. And it's weird because I can be horny and it's not directed anywhere. There's nothing directed at anything. It's just I'm feeling a certain way now. That's strange, because the attraction isn't there. The second half of that, because usually you have libido and attraction sort of go hand in hand if you're an allo, I think.
I think you're attracted to someone and therefore you want to have sex with them.
Right. Or you feel like you want to have sex and you go out and find someone you're attracted to.
Oh yeah, because some people will get it out of their system with not the person that they're attracted to, which is very strange also to think about.
Because then that's aromantic but allosexual. Those exist too, where they don't feel romantic attraction, but they feel sexual attraction.
Interesting. Yes. I didn't think about it, but of course, it's kind of Lego. You can put all the Legos on top of one another.
Yeah. And I think because if asexuality isn't talked about a lot, aromanticism is talked about even less. And so being sexually attracted to someone but not feeling that romance.
But I think it's misunderstood. I think asexuality is more misunderstood than aromanticism. Hear me out. Mm-hmm. I feel like a lot of people think that asexuality is aromanticism. And that's why a lot of asexual people are, for lack of a better word, bullied, because you're asexual but you're having sex, or you're asexual but you're in love, or blah blah blah. And so I think a lot of people, and in the media also, most of the media that I have consumed will use asexuality as aromanticism.
Yes.
And that confused me for a bit. I know it's not everything, but it has happened.
It's very interesting because the flip of no romance but sex is portrayed in media, but it's portrayed as they're not a good person. They're a fuckboy, or she's a, slut, which, whatever. Don't like that. I wish there was a fuckboy equivalent for a woman. A fuck
fuck
girl.
girl.
I'll call her a fuck girl. that is portrayed in media, like no romantic attraction but sexual attraction. But the opposite isn't all the time portrayed. They don't, but they're portrayed as not great people. Like they're missing something because they don't feel romance, which I think sucks for them as well. Like they're not bad people just because they're sexually attracted and don't feel a romantic attraction. I mean, it is if you are being a fuckboy and being shit about, of course. But
there are two people that act the same way, but it comes from a different place.
Yes. No, so libido, sex drive versus attraction. So you can have a sex drive and have a very high libido without being attracted to anyone. Or you can have a very low libido, and be attracted to people. So like that's a thing that can happen as well.
Yeah, that's what I thought I had for a while.
Yeah, low libido but attraction.
Yeah, or like almost absence of libido. Because I think like you, sometimes I'll have like an urge out of nowhere, and I don't actually want to act on it. I just want it to go away. Because I've never had it happen at the right time. So I would be interested in experiencing libido while I'm with my partner and just be like, all right, should we have sex and see what happens? Because it's never happened, so I don't know. But I feel like every time it's happened, I'm just like, no, like, go away, please. I don't want you here. You're not welcome.
I think those are all the terms we've kind of talked about in our little opening dialogue. If there's any other terms, maybe we can hit that next time. There's so many, because like we said, it's a spectrum. And people like to put labels on things. And so for anything that you might be feeling, there's probably a term for it. And with it becoming more and more regular, there's probably a lot more terms for it. Like agosexual. I had not heard of that one yet.
All right. Should we wrap up? Okay, so that was actually really interesting. I liked talking about this with you.
Yeah, this is good.
This is all very new for us, but we were very excited to share more episodes with you. If there is a specific topic you have in mind that you would like us to discuss, you can email us at acingitpod@gmail.com. We appreciate you listening in, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye!
Bye!